Hello everyone. So now I'm gonna talk about um, the improvers, the monks. When temples got too rich, what happens when a religion becomes too successful? It begins as belief, then it becomes comfort, ritual, art, family memory, political legitimacy, then land, then tax exemption. Then one day, the emperor looked at the monastery and stopped seeing enlightenment. He sees real estate. That's the story of the Huichang separation of Buddhism in Tang Dynasty. And it begins with very uncomfortable truth. Our religion may speak of heaven, but if it owns enough land on earth, the government will eventually notice. Many people imagine religious persecution as a battle of ideas. Buddha versus Tao, monks versus priests, metaphysics versus metaphysics. But history is usually less elegant and more embarrassing. The emperor didn't wake up one morning and say, I have serious concerns about Buddhist ontology. He looked at monasteries, land, donation, tax exemption, and thousands of monks and nuns outside the no more tax system probably thought interesting, very spiritual, but also very expensive. Just a strange comedy of political history. Theology begins in heaven, but the audit happens on earth. You may believe in emptiness. The tax office believes in poverty records. To understand why Buddhism was our top, we must first remember why it survived. As I have told you in previous episode, Buddhism did not remain a foreign teacher sitting politely at the border. It entered Chinese life. It entered the home. So it succeed too well. It became too useful, visible, wealthy, organized, and independent. A major Buddhist monastery was not just a place where people pray. It could be a school, library, landlord, welfare institution, local employer, a place that stored wealth, that received donation, a place where people left ordinary family and labor obligation, a place that could become a network outside direct state control. In other words, a monastery could be institutional. That's where government starts waiting. Private belief is one thing. Independent institutions are another. The state can tolerate belief more easily than independent power. You can believe in paradise, but when paradise has land deeds, tenants, farmers, bronze statues, donors, and tax privilege, suddenly paradise becomes a political problem. Tang Dynasty in mid-9th century was not the confident empire of early Tang. The state already been weakened by rebelling military governors, fiscal strings, and regional fragmentation. When the center is strong, it can afford to look gorgeous. When the center is weak, start counting. And when the state start counting, even gods could get nervous. Emperor Wuzong's separation Buddhism reached its peak in 845. The campaign targeted Buddhist monastery monks and nuns, and also affected other non-Taoist or foreign religion. The economy issue was central because monasteries held substantial wealth in land and other resources while not paying taxes. So the story is not simply an emperor hated Buddhism. It's an empire under impression look at a vast religious institution and ask who owns the land, who controls the people, who pay taxes, who doesn't, who answers to the throne, who has quietly become powerful without wearing a crown. That's the most important, interesting part. Earlier rulers had used Buddhism It could make power look sacred. It could turn a throne into destiny. We saw this Wu Tian. When she needed a new language legitimacy, Buddhism helped her rewrite the sky above the throne. But now under Wuzong, the relationship reversed. The same Buddhism that once held power became a rival to power. That's a dangerous love affair between religion and the state. When the ruler needs you, you're sacred. When the ruler needs your property, you're a problem. That's not unique to China. That's politics with incense. So, Henry VII of England looked at monastery and saw more than prayer. Between 1536 and 1540, the English crown dissolved ministerial and appropriated their income after Henry's break with Rome. The UK National Archive described the dissolution as the crown's closure of religious houses and appropriation of their income. Buddhist monasteries were not Catholic monasteries. China was not Tudor England, but the pattern is recognizable. Religious institutions become wealthy. The state become hungry. Spiritual property become political property. You can call it reform, purification, or protecting society. You can call it returning people to productive life. But somewhere in the background, someone is making an inventory. That's a history books sometimes describe it. The gods may argue in heaven. The contents win on earth. The French Revolution gave another mirror. In 1790, the civil constitution of clergy recognized the Catholic Church in France under state control. Revolutionary measures also included nationalization of church lands and abolition of tithes. Again, not the same story. Different religion, different century, political language, but the same deep question. Can a state tolerate an institution that has its own wealth, loyalty, rituals, and authority? Or must the store absorb it? Must the state absorb it? That's why the Huizang persecution, not just Chinese religious history, is part of global pattern. Whenever religion becomes land, wealth, education, clarity, and social authority, the state asks, are you serving heaven, or are you becoming a state within the state? We need to be precise. This was not church versus state in the Western sense. China didn't have a Catholic-style church with a pope. There was no single Buddhist Vatican sending orders to Chang'an, so the better phrase is monastery versus empire. The monastery represented a different kind of power, not a rival king or foreign army, not a political party, but a network of vows, rituals, land, wealth, memory, prestige, and social trust. So that's why it's difficult to manage. A soldier can be defeated, a rebel could be executed, a tax could be collected, but how do you govern a moral institution that people believe is connected to salvation? How do you tax merit? How do you audit compassion? How do you confiscate karma? The state performs things with a clear label. Religion is dangerous because it turns resources into sacred resources. It turns resources into sacred resources, and the sacred resources are harder to seize without looking like the villain. So the Huizang separation mainly targeted Buddhism, but other foreign religions also infected, including the Church of the East, which I talked about in the first episode. Buddhism was rooted because it had become powerful. Christianity was nearly erased because it had not yet become rooted. That's a tragedy. One religion was too successful to ignore, the other too fragile to survive the storm. Buddhism entered the home, but the Church of the East had entered the core. But in Chinese history, the home can outlast the court. A religion protected only by ruler can disappear when ruler change their minds. A religion carried by family, funeral, festival, story, and habits is much harder to kill. The state can close temple. It can easily erase a grandma's memory. So, what the Emperor Wuzhong really feared, not only Buddha, monks, foreign idea, he feared leakage. That's a word. Leakage of land from tax base, of people from labor obligation, leakage of loyalty from family state order, leakage of wealth into institution he did not fully control. Every empire fears leakage. The Roman Empire feared tax evasion. Medieval kings fear church immunity. Modern states fear offshore accounts. Technology change. That the anxiety doesn't. Every state asks the same question: who is outside my citizen? Who has resources I can come on? Who has loyalty I can fully supervise? Who can organize people without my permission? In a sense, the monastery was not just a religious problem. It was a governance problem. The emperor did not only want correct belief, he wanted a legible society. And monastery made society less legible. Too many people, property, ritual power, too much exemption, and too much heaven outside tax register. We shouldn't make this childish. This is not a story where the state is pure evil or religion is pure innocence. Buddhist institution could be exploitative. They could accumulate wealth. They could become corrupt. They could benefit from privilege while ordinary peasants carry tax burden. Religious institutions are made of human beings. So yes, they can become holy. They can become very creative with counting. But the state was not innocent either. The state used ideology, reform, and moral language to regain control over wealth and people. The serious question is, what happened when spiritual authority became economic power? What happened when political authority decide nothing sacred is allowed to remain outside its reach? That's a conflict. Religions say something belongs to heaven. The state says this is interesting. Please fill out land registration form. This brings us to a question that's still alive today. Should the sacred be tax exempt? Should church, temple, mosques, monasteries, and religious charity be treated differently from ordinary institutions if they feed the poor, educate children, preserve culture, and comfort the grieving? Maybe yes. And if they accumulate wealth, manipulate believers, avoid accountability, and become political machine? Maybe no. That's why Hui Chang's stories still feel modern. Because the question has not disappeared. We still argue about religious tax exemption, whether religious institutions are public goods or private power, whether governments protect religious freedom or use regulation to control independent community. Where is the boundary between faith and power, between clarity and between charity and influence, between sacred space and non-tax property, between religious freedom and institutional privilege? So the Hui Chang separation was not just an emperor attacking Buddhism. It was a moment when the state looked at religion and saw an institution too large to ignore. Buddhism had become to China as a foreign teaching. It became family ritual, art, political legitimacy, land, target. That's a paradox of religious success. When a faith remains too foreign, it may disappear. But if it becomes too powerful, it may be attacked. If it becomes too close to the state, it may be used. If it becomes too independent, it may be feared. There's no safe position. Religion survived history by walking a dangerous line, close enough to society to matter, but not so independent on power that one emperor can erase. Buddhism survived the persecution because it was already more than monastery. It was inside language, imagination, family memory. The building could be damaged, the habit of meaning remained. A religion may need emperor to open door, but it needs ordinary people to survive after door closes. In the end, history didn't preserve the face only impresses the core. It preserves the face that teach people how to bury the dead, how to imagine mercy, endure suffering, how to pass meaning from one generation to the next. The emperor could audit the monasteries, how he could seize land, defraud monks, turn secret wells back into imperial revenue. He couldn't fully tax memory. He couldn't fully confiscate grief. He couldn't fully register hope. That's why Buddhism remained. When heaven owns too much land, the emperor struck back. But by then, heaven had already moved into the human heart. So that's for today's video. When heaven owns too much land. I'll see you next time. Thank you.